Well, let's pick up on some of those things Stuart was talking about and explore this Ukraine grain deal in a little more depth. Michael Bociurkiw is a global affairs analyst at the US think tank, the Atlantic Council. Michael, welcome. Why is Ukraine and the Ukraine grain deal so important for world food supplies?
Good to be with you. Well, it's clearly because Ukraine and other Western countries, Turkey, care about what's happening elsewhere in the world. For example, in South Sudan, which millions there on the brink of starvation because of 3 years of irregular rain. So as soon as you have a small blockade, which the Russians formed in the Black Sea when the war started, it has ripple effects from around the world. So it's very, very important for all of these countries to work together to make that grain flow from here in Odessa and elsewhere in Ukraine.
What is the likelihood of Russia pulling out of the deal, and what are the wider implications?
Well, I think what Stuart just reported about the Russians, I think they're bluffing as they normally do with these types of deals. But look, Russia should be doing everything it can to facilitate the export of Ukrainian grain from the Black Sea. While they're doing that, they're also stealing grain from places like Zaporizhzhia, places in Ukraine that they've occupied. So Russia has a lot of friends in Africa, countries which it is helping with construction projects, things like that. So I think it's in their best interest to make sure that people in those countries have food on their table.
How well has the Ukrainian grain deal worked so far? And there's also been this sort of policing hub, hasn't there, an inspection hub set up in Istanbul. How has that worked?
Yeah, well, I'm just a couple of blocks away from the port of Odessa. I just came back from there, and there's one big bulk carrier being loaded right now. At any given time, you see about 5 or 6 ships on the horizon waiting to come in, but the port is not operating at hardly full capacity. Having said that, 23 million tons of grain since this deal was signed is a pretty impressive amount. So the Ukrainians say there are blockages with Russian inspectors in Istanbul, but on the whole, it's working not too badly.
And put your finger on what the problems are, getting this grain shipped out of Ukraine and on its way to Africa and the Middle East. What is causing the hold-up and the problem?
Sure. Well, again, the Ukrainians say it's the Russian inspectors being a little bit too aggressive in Istanbul. That's where the ships have to stop before they carry the grain onwards. But look, in the wider picture, I think that there are superpowers or aspiring superpowers that have influence over Russia. In this war, which is the most consequential since World War II, staying silent does not make you a superpower. Speaking up and getting food moving, getting Russia to remove every blockage possible is how you're going to be written up in history as a superpower, as an example in this war.
Why does this grain have to be moved by sea? Is it not possible to move it by land and by air?
Look, you just have to go a few kilometers away from where I am, and you'll see the incredible blockages at the borders with Moldova, Poland, and elsewhere. Trucks waiting 2 days to cross over. And then Ukrainian airspace is closed as well. So it's very heavy grain to ship. So sea is the best way. These bulk carriers are huge. So they should be given unlimited access coming in as fast as possible to get that grain out, because there's a lot still backlogged here in Odessa and other Ukrainian ports.
And if you're sitting watching this in Africa or the Middle East, what does a failure on renegotiating this deal look like?
Well, it means not only higher costs for you, but possible starvation. So it's really, really important. Russia, China, other countries have very strong partnerships in Africa, in the Middle East. So I think it behooves them to also play a part in making sure this grain deal is renewed indefinitely, because climate change and other factors, conflicts, migration have really made food, a precious commodity, more difficult to come by.
And 10 days left before this deal runs out. If you're a betting man, what are the chances of some kind of fix?
Well, look, I've been at the negotiating table with Russian representatives when I was with the OSCE. They tend to bluff, and then they sign on the dotted line. Again, I think pressure on Russia will come from its friends in Africa, the Middle East, that really, really are on the brink of starvation and can't afford another blockage. So I think at the end of the day, they'll sign it, and that'll be good news for the entire world.
Michael, good to talk to you. Michael Bociurkiw, Global Affairs Analyst at the US think tank, the Atlantic Council.